My name is Evan Miller. I'm not a writer. I'm a cave diver. Or at least I used to be. For 5 years, I worked around Yellowstone with a small research team. Officially, we mapped underwater cave systems connected to hot springs and sinkholes. Unofficially, we were told very clearly what not to write down, what photos not to keep, and which locations were closed for our own safety. Most people don't know this, but beneath Yellowstone, there's a mess of flooded tunnels. Some are volcanic, some are limestone. Some don't fit neatly into either category. The water is cold in places it shouldn't be, hot where it makes no sense, and sometimes it flows in directions that ignore gravity. I loved it. The silence, the pressure, the feeling that the world above no longer mattered. That was before the rules. The first rule wasn't written anywhere. It was told to me by a man named Harlan Price, a diver who'd been there since the late 90s. He said it casually, like reminding me to lock my car. "Never dive the same cave twice in a row," he said. I laughed and asked why. He didn't laugh back. "Because the caves remember patterns," he said, "and you don't want to be predictable down there." I thought it was a joke. Cave divers joke about fear all the time. It's how we survive mentally. Then came the second rule. "If you hear bubbles that aren't yours," Harlan said, "don't look behind you." That one stuck with me. Yellowstone caves aren't like the ones in documentaries. Visibility can drop to 0 in seconds. One bad fin kick and you're swimming in black milk. You rely on touch, line tension, timing. Your own breathing becomes your clock. On my 3rd week, I asked Harlan where these rules came from. He told me about Lena Brooks. She was a diver before me, strong, careful, not the type to panic. One morning she entered a cave system labeled YS-17, shallow entry, easy exit. She followed every protocol except one. She went back the next day. They found her tank 3 days later, wedged into a tunnel too narrow for a human body. No scrape marks, no blood, just the tank, perfectly upright. Regulator still gently releasing air like someone was breathing from the other side. After that, the rules stopped sounding funny. And that was before I broke one myself. The rule I broke seemed harmless. Never bring a camera past the second marker. That was Rule 3. It was written on a laminated card we all carried, right next to emergency signals and gas limits. The official reason was simple. Cameras distracted divers, reduced awareness, increased risk. The real reason came later. That morning, Harlan stayed behind, said his joints were acting up. So it was just me and another diver, Marcus Hale, a quiet guy who never talked, unless he had to. We entered through a narrow sinkhole hidden behind a fallen pine. From the surface, it looked like nothing. Just dark water and steam rising into the cold air. Once submerged, the world turned green and dim, like being inside an old bottle. The first marker came quickly. Orange tape tied to a rock, or normal. The second marker was deeper, where the tunnel sloped downward at an angle that always made my stomach tighten. That's where we were supposed to stop documenting. I don't know why I brought the camera anyway. Maybe curiosity, maybe arrogance. Cave divers die from both. I clipped it to my chest and followed the line. At first, nothing felt wrong. The cave walls were smooth, almost polished. No silt clouds, no sudden temperature changes. My breathing was steady. Then I noticed something small. The guideline felt warm, not hot, just slightly warmer than the water around it. I stopped and squeezed it between my fingers, thinking it was my imagination. Marcus turned. gave me a quick hand signal asking if I was okay. I gave the thumbs up and kept moving. That's when I heard it. Bubbles. Slow, controlled, not panicked. They weren't coming from Marcus. I could see his exhaust clearly, rising in clean bursts. These bubbles were behind me, steady and patient, like someone matching my breathing. Rule 2 echoed in my head. Don't look behind you. I stared straight ahead and told myself it was trapped air escaping the cave ceiling. That happens sometimes, totally normal. Except the bubbles followed when I stopped. They paused when I paused. When I started again, they started again. My chest tightened. I focused on the line, counting my breaths. In, out, in, out. Then the guideline twitched. Just once, like something had brushed against it. Marcus noticed too. He turned fully this time, scanning behind us with his light. His beam cut through the water and disappeared into darkness. He looked back at me and shook his head. Nothing there. But the bubbles were still coming. We reached a chamber wider than expected, the ceiling vanishing above us. The water here was colder. Wrong kind of cold. The kind that creeps through your suit and settles in your bones. Marcus pointed to the wall. There were markings. Not scratches, not erosion, handprints. Human handprints pressed into the stone, fingers spread wide like someone had been pushing themselves out of the wall. All of them pointed deeper into the cave. That's when my camera turned on by itself. The screen on the camera lit up without me touching it. A pale blue glow spilled into the water, soft but bright enough to ruin my night vision. I froze. Cameras don't just turn on underwater. Not unless a button is pressed or there's a serious malfunction. Marcus noticed immediately. He swam closer and grabbed my arm, his grip tight through the glove. He pointed at the camera, then at me, his eyes wide behind the mask. I shrugged, helpless. I hadn't touched it. Before I could shut it off, the camera beeped. Once, then again, it started recording. The bubbles behind us stopped. The silence that followed was worse. No extra sound. No movement. Just my breathing and Marcus's, loud inside my head. Then the light from the camera shifted. It wasn't pointing where my chest was facing. The strap was fixed, but the lens slowly angled downward like someone invisible was tilting it with careful hands. The camera focused on the cave floor. There were footprints, bare feet. They weren't old. The edges were sharp, pressed into the thin layer of silt, like someone had just walked there seconds ago. Each step was perfectly spaced, calm, unhurried. They led past us, going deeper. Marcus shook his head hard, signaling no. Abort, now. I nodded so fast my neck hurt. We turned together, careful not to kick up silt, and started back along the line. That's when I felt it. A gentle pressure on my tank. Not a shove, not a grab. More like a hand resting there, steadying itself. I didn't react. I couldn't. Every instinct screamed to spin around, but the rule held me in place. Don't look. Marcus suddenly kicked forward harder than necessary. His movements were sharp, panicked. He was seeing something I wasn't. He stopped and turned, shining his light directly at me. Then his eyes moved past my shoulder. His breathing exploded into chaos. He dropped the line. I reached for him, but something pulled my tank backward just enough to throw me off balance. My mask filled with a thin trickle of water. Cold burned my face as I fought to stay calm. Marcus kicked away, flailing now, silt erupting into a blinding cloud. His light spun wildly, flashing across the cave walls. For half a second, his beam caught something behind me. I saw it reflected in the glass of my camera screen. It was tall, too tall for the cave. Its body looked wrong, like it was folded in places joints shouldn't bend. Its head tilted, studying Marcus with what looked like curiosity. No eyes, just smooth skin where a face should be. The camera beeped again, and the thing leaned closer. That's when Marcus disappeared. Not dragged, not pulled, screaming into the dark. He was just gone. 1 second he was there, the next, the water closed in like he'd never existed. I was alone. I stayed still for a few seconds after Marcus vanished. Not because I was brave, but because my body refused to move. Panic is loud in movies. In real life, it's quiet. It locks your joints and makes every thought feel thick. The bubbles were back, right behind me, slow, even. Familiar now, like the sound belonged there. I forced myself to reach for the guideline. My fingers brushed it, then wrapped tight. It was warmer than before. Definitely warmer. Like it had been held. I started moving backwards, slow and careful, pulling myself along the line instead of kicking. I didn't want to stir the silt. I didn't want to announce myself. The camera was still recording. I could feel the faint vibration against my chest. I didn't turn it off. Something told me not to. As I moved, the cave felt different. Not physically different, but wrong in a way I couldn't explain. The space felt tighter, like the walls had crept closer while I wasn't looking. My shoulders brushed stone I was sure I'd cleared on the way in. Then the line went slack. That shouldn't happen. The guideline is anchored every few meters. Slack means either I missed an anchor or something removed one. I stopped. The bubbles stopped too. That's when I heard a sound that wasn't bubbles. Breathing. Not through a regulator. No mechanical hiss. Just air moving in and out, slow and deep. Like someone standing very close in a dark room. It was right next to my ear. I squeezed my eyes shut, even though it made no difference underwater. I focused on my own breathing, tried to keep it steady. The breathing copied me. Same rhythm, same pauses. I thought of Harlan, of the way he'd said the caves remember patterns. I shortened my breaths, made them uneven. The sound hesitated, then adjusted. That's when I understood. It was learning me. I pulled forward again, faster now, not caring about silt. My light cut through the cloud, revealing stone that didn't look familiar. The exit tunnel should have been to my left. It wasn't there. Instead, there was another passage, wider, smoother, sloping down. And on the wall beside it, written in something darker than the rock, were words, not carved, pressed in. Don't follow your own line. My heart hammered so hard I thought I'd black out. The guideline in my hand twitched. Then it started moving forward on its own, being pulled deeper. I let go of the line. Every training instinct I had screamed that this was wrong. In cave diving, the line is life. You lose it, you die. Simple math. But something else was holding that line now. And whatever it was, it knew exactly where it wanted me to go. The guideline slid forward, disappearing into the darker passage, moving with purpose. Not drifting, not floating. I backed away, kicking gently, keeping my light fixed on it until it vanished around the bend. The cave went quiet again. Too quiet. No bubbles behind me this time. I turned my body just enough to scan without fully looking back. The silt cloud had settled slightly. The space behind me was empty. I didn't feel relief. I felt watched. I checked my gauges. Air was fine, but time wasn't. I should have been nearing the exit by now. Instead, I was in a section I didn't recognize at all. That's when I noticed the temperature. The water was warmer. Not geothermal warm, body warm. Like swimming through something alive. My light caught movement ahead, not fast, just a shift in the dark, like shadows, adjusting themselves. I slowed, then stopped completely. The cave floor here wasn't stone anymore. It was smooth and uneven at the same time, like compacted mud. My fin brushed something soft, and I recoiled instinctively. It was fabric, a torn sleeve, floating slightly caught on a rock. I recognized it immediately. Marcus's suit. The cut was clean. No fraying, no tearing. Like something had carefully removed it. I reached out without thinking and touched the fabric. It was warm. Behind me, a hand touched my shoulder. Not the tank this time, my shoulder. 5 fingers. Human fingers. I held my breath. The hand slid slowly down my arm, past my elbow to my wrist. It squeezed once, gently like reassurance. Then it let go. Something drifted past my face, close enough that my mask fogged for a second. I didn't turn, I couldn't. A shape moved in front of me, blocking my light. The camera buzzed harder against my chest and tilted upward again, filming. I saw it then through the screen. It was wearing a dive suit. Old, cracked, sun-bleached. The name stitched across the chest was still readable. Lena B. Her helmet light flickered weakly as she raised one hand and pointed. Not deeper this time, but to a narrow gap in the wall I hadn't noticed before. Her head tilted, slowly, like she was waiting for me to decide. I followed her. I don't say that proudly. I didn't weigh options or think it through. I just moved. When someone who's already dead points somewhere in a cave, you listen. That felt like another rule, even if no one had ever said it out loud. The gap in the wall was barely wide enough for my shoulders. I turned sideways and eased through, careful not to scrape my tank. The stone felt slick, almost soft, like it hadn't fully decided to be rock yet. On the other side, the cave changed again. The water cleared. Visibility opened up to maybe 20 feet, which is a miracle down there. The walls were lighter in color, almost pale gray, and covered in long, uneven grooves that ran parallel to each other, like drag marks. Lena hovered in front of me, her movements slow and controlled. Textbook perfect buoyancy. No panic, no wasted motion. She looked like she'd been diving this place every day. I realized something that made my stomach drop. Her tank gauge read empty. The needle sat flat against 0. Yet bubbles streamed from her regulator in soft, steady bursts. She led me down a gentle slope. I kept my distance, matching her pace. The bubbles from earlier were gone. The pressure in my chest eased slightly, like whatever had been behind me was no longer interested. We reached another chamber. Smaller than the last, but rounder. The walls curved inward, almost smooth enough to be shaped. In the center of the chamber was something that didn't belong. A wooden sign. Old. Swollen from water, but intact. Someone had hammered it into the cave floor long ago. 3 rules were carved into it. I floated closer and read them. 1. Never return alone. 2. Do not record what answers you. 3. If you are followed, become lost on purpose. The camera on my chest went dark, just shut off. No beep, no warning. Lena turned to face me fully now. Where her face should have been behind the mask, there was only darkness. Not broken glass, not shadow, depth. She raised her hand again and pointed at the 3rd rule, and she did something I didn't expect. She pushed me, not hard, just enough to send me drifting sideways, into a tunnel that wasn't there a second ago. The water swallowed me and the chamber vanished behind a curtain of black. I tumbled, disoriented, banging my shoulder against stone. My light flickered, then stabilized. When I stopped moving, I realized two things at once. I was alone again, and I could hear my own bubbles echoing back at me from ahead. The echo didn't make sense. Sound underwater is strange, but not that strange. Echoes come from walls, from distance. This was different. It wasn't bouncing back. It was being sent back, like a reply. I stopped breathing for a moment, holding the regulator between my teeth. The bubbles ahead of me, kept going. Same rhythm, same pauses. I exhaled slowly. The bubbles ahead matched me again. Rule 3 replayed in my head. If you are followed, become lost on purpose. I understood now what Harlan meant when he said the caves remember patterns. This thing, whatever it was, didn't hunt the way animals do. It learned routes, behaviors, habits, divers. I angled my body and kicked downward into a side passage, then immediately turned upward into another, doubling back on myself in a tight loop. I shut off my light for 3 seconds, then 5. When I turned it back on, the tunnel looked wrong. Not darker, just unfamiliar. The rock color had shifted slightly, the grooves were gone, the floor was jagged again. The echo stopped. No bubbles ahead, no bubbles behind. For the first time since Marcus disappeared, I felt something like hope. It didn't last. I saw the line again. The guideline. Except this one wasn't tied to anything. It floated freely in the water, stretched straight as if under tension. I swam closer and felt my stomach drop. It wasn't nylon anymore. It was braided hair, thick, dark, twisted together into a rope, ends cleanly cut, floating gently like it belonged there. I backed away fast, my fin catching the rope. It twitched immediately, snapping tight. The water around me vibrated. A pressure wave rolled through the tunnel, deep and slow, like something massive had shifted position. I turned to flee and slammed straight into the cave wall, except it wasn't stone. It gave slightly under my hands. Skin, cold, smooth, unmoving. My light slid across it, revealing a curve that might have been a shoulder or a back, or something trying to imitate one. I didn't scream. There was no air for it. I pushed off and kicked hard, blindly, scraping through narrow stone, tearing fabric. The cave squeezed around me, tighter than before, forcing me forward whether I wanted to go or not. Ahead, I saw something impossible. Faint daylight, a pale glow filtering through water, an exit. I kicked with everything I had left, lungs burning, body shaking. The glow grew brighter, closer. Behind me, I felt fingers brush my fin, just once, like a reminder. Then the tunnel spat me out. I broke the surface, coughing, ripping the regulator from my mouth and dragging in air that tasted like sulfur and pine. My hands scraped rock as I pulled myself onto the edge of a narrow pool. Steam curled up around me, blurring the trees and sky into something unreal. For a few seconds, I just lay there, chest heaving, staring at the gray clouds above Yellowstone. I kept expecting something to grab my ankle and pull me back under. Nothing did. The pool was small, too small to be the entrance we'd used. I recognized the area only vaguely, a restricted thermal zone miles from where we'd gone in. No trail, no signs, just wet stone and quiet. I checked my gear with shaking hands. My tank was nearly empty but intact, no cracks, no missing pieces. The camera was gone. The mount on my chest was snapped clean, like it had been twisted off. I didn't remember that happening. I staggered away from the water and sat against a boulder, trying to get my breathing under control. That's when I noticed my gloves. They were backwards. Left on the right hand, or right on the left. I know how that sounds. I checked twice. The name I'd written inside the cuffs was flipped. I didn't change them. I radioed for help. Static at first. Then a voice came through, distorted but real. Rangers found me an hour later, hypothermic, dehydrated, alone. When I asked about Marcus, the ranger frowned. "Who?" he said. Back at the station, they pulled up the dive roster. My name was there. No Marcus Hale, no Lena Brooks, no record of anyone else assigned to that site. According to the paperwork, I'd gone in solo, against protocol. They grounded me immediately. Psychological evaluation, mandatory leave, lots of quiet looks. Before I left, Harlan visited me once. He didn't ask what happened. He just said, "Did it let you go, or did it lose you?" I didn't answer. That night in the motel, I dreamed of water, of bubbles rising in perfect rhythm, of a hand resting on my shoulder, steady and patient. When I woke up, my boots were wet, and there was dried silt on the floor, leading from the bathroom to the door. I didn't sleep after that. I sat on the edge of the motel bed until morning. Boots on, lights on, TV playing some late-night infomercial, just to have a human voice in the room. Every few minutes I checked the door, the window, the bathroom. Nothing moved. The silt trail didn't go away. I wiped it once with a towel. When I looked back, it was there again, darker, like it had just been tracked in. At sunrise, I packed and left without checking out. I drove until Yellowstone was far behind me, until the land flattened and the steam vents were replaced by gas stations and empty diners. I told myself it was over, that whatever happened down there stayed down there. That lie lasted about a week. It started small. My shower water wouldn't stay the same temperature. It would go cold for a few seconds, then warm again, not hot, just body warm. I heard dripping in places that were dry. Once, brushing my teeth, I noticed fog forming on the bathroom mirror, even though the shower wasn't running. When I wiped it away, there was a handprint underneath. 5 fingers. Left hand. I stopped diving completely, sold my gear, gave the rest away. I tried to move on, but caves have a way of changing how you think. Once you've been in enough tight spaces, the world above starts to feel thin. Harlan called me one evening. I hadn't given him my new number. "They don't always stay in the caves," he said, like we were picking up a conversation we'd had yesterday. I asked him how many others had made it out. There was a long pause. "Enough to make new rules," he said. Before he hung up, he told me one last thing. "Sometimes," he said, "it doesn't follow you. Sometimes it sends something back instead." That night I dreamed I was floating in clear water, staring at my own back, watching bubbles rise from a regulator I wasn't wearing. When I woke up, my ears were ringing like I'd just surfaced too fast. On my kitchen table, dripping onto the wood, was a coil of dark, wet hair, braided. I didn't touch the hair. I just stood there, staring at it. Water pooling on the table and dripping onto the floor. It smelled like iron and old water, the kind you find at the bottom of a lake. My first thought wasn't fear, it was recognition. I knew exactly where it came from. I grabbed a trash bag, wrapped my hand in a towel, and scooped the braid inside without letting it brush my skin. The moment it left the table, the ringing in my ears stopped. I drove it straight out of town and dumped it into a river, watching it sink and twist away like it was relieved to be moving again. That should have been the end of it. But after that, the rules started coming back to me in pieces. Not spoken, not written, just understood. I learned not to take baths, showers only, and never longer than 5 minutes. I learned to sleep with the bedroom door open. Closed doors made the air feel heavy. And most importantly, I learned never to answer if I heard someone breathing in the dark. A few months later, I got an email from the Park Service. No subject line, just a message. We found something you might want to see. Against my better judgment, I went back. They showed me a still image pulled from an old server. Corrupted footage recovered from a camera that had never been logged into evidence. It was from YS-17. The timestamp was the day Marcus disappeared. The image showed 2 divers in the frame. One was Marcus. The other was me. Except I was facing the camera. My mask was off, and I was smiling. The ranger asked if I recognized the image. I told him no, because if I admitted the truth, that I remembered that moment clearly from the other side of the lens, I don't think they would have let me leave. That night, back in my hotel room near the park, I heard bubbles, not in my head, from the bathtub, slow, even, patient. I sat on the bed and didn't move. The bubbles stopped. Then I heard water slosh softly like someone standing up. I didn't look at the bathroom. I kept my eyes on the carpet, counting the dark stains and trying to convince myself they'd always been there. Hotels have weird carpets. That's normal. Everything was normal. The floor creaked. One slow step. Wet. The smell hit next. Cold water, minerals, something old that had never seen sunlight. My hands curled into fists so tight my nails bit into my palms. I remembered another rule then, one Harlan never said out loud, but every experienced diver followed without realizing it. Never acknowledge what shouldn't be there. So I stayed still. I breathed shallow and uneven on purpose. I let my body slump forward like I was asleep sitting up. Another step. Closer. I could feel the presence now. Not touching me, not yet, just standing there, deciding. The air pressure in the room shifted like the moment before a storm breaks. My ears popped softly, then, right next to my head, heard it, my own voice. "Evan," it whispered, perfect, calm, familiar. I didn't react. The silence stretched. Seconds passed, maybe minutes. Time does strange things when you're being watched. Finally, I heard water dripping again, moving away this time, back toward the bathroom. The tub creaked under weight. Then nothing, no splash, no drain, no footsteps leaving. When morning came, the bathroom was dry, bone dry. No footprints, no hair, no smell. But the mirror above the sink was fogged over. Written across it, traced with a finger from the inside, were 3 words. "You survived wrong." I checked out without speaking to anyone and drove until my hands stopped shaking. I don't live near water anymore. No lakes, no rivers. Definitely no caves. I keep my life small and predictable. Same routine, same streets, same sounds. Because whatever came back with me doesn't like surprises, and sometimes, late at night, when the room is quiet and my breathing slows, without me meaning to, I feel it adjust its rhythm, matching mine, waiting for me to forget the rules again. I started writing things down after that, not a journal, more like reminders. Sticky notes on the fridge, short sentences on scraps of paper in my wallet. Rules fade when you don't feed them, and I was terrified of forgetting even one. Don't hum near running water. Never let the sink drain completely empty. If you drop something in the dark, leave it there. The hardest one was this: don't watch yourself for too long. I learned that after I caught my reflection blinking a half second later than I did. Just once. Just enough to make my stomach turn. Seeing yourself slightly out of sync messes with your head in a way I don't have words for. I covered mirrors after that. Not dramatically, just towels. Practical. Weeks passed. Then months. Nothing major happened. The breathing at night faded, the pressure in rooms eased up. I almost convinced myself the caves had finally lost interest. That's when the letter arrived. No return address. Just my name written carefully, like the person took their time. Inside was a single laminated card. It was old, scratched, edges rounded from years of handling. The same kind we carried while diving. On it were 4 rules. 3 I recognized immediately. The 4th was new. 4. If it reaches the surface, don't send it back alone. My hands went numb. At the bottom of the card was a location, coordinates, Yellowstone. Below that, written in smaller letters, it learned enough from you. That night, my phone rang once at 2:17 a.m. When I answered, all I heard was steady breathing. Not mine. Too slow. Too calm. Still listening, I didn't go back to Yellowstone right away. I told myself I was being smart, that rushing in was how people got killed. But the truth is, I was scared. Not of the place, but of what the rules were asking me to do. Don't send it back alone. That meant someone else had to go with it. I started digging. Old reports. Forum posts that vanished a day after I bookmarked them. Obituaries that didn't quite line up. Experienced divers who retired early and never touched water again. A pattern formed if you looked long enough. Some people survived the caves. Some came back changed. And a few went back willingly. I found one of them in Idaho. A woman named Rachel Dawn, former rescue diver. Lost her partner in a flooded mine 10 years ago. Quit overnight. Lived inland ever since. When I told her where I'd been, she didn't ask for proof. She just closed her eyes and said, "So it followed you too." We talked for hours, compared rules, compared scars. Some of hers matched mine almost perfectly, down to the places where the skin never quite warmed again. She showed me something that made my throat go dry. A photo. 2 divers in a cave. One was her. The other looked like her, but slightly wrong. 2 straight. 2 still. "That one still dives," she said quietly. "I don't." Rachel had been hearing the calls again. Dripping sounds. Breathing in vents. She knew what the card meant before I even showed it to her. By the end of the night, we'd made a decision neither of us said out loud. We'd go back together. Not to explore, not to study, to return something that had learned how to walk in daylight. As we packed, Rachel stopped and looked at me. "If we do this wrong," she said, "one of us doesn't come back." I nodded. We both knew the worse option was that both of us would. We entered Yellowstone at dawn. No fanfare, no permits, no official site. Just a stretch of land that wasn't on any tourist map, where the ground steamed gently and the birds refused to land. The coordinates led us to a sinkhole I'd never seen before. Or maybe one that hadn't existed yet the last time I was there. The water was calm. Too calm. No ripples. No insects touching the surface. Rachel checked her gear twice. So did I. We didn't speak much. Words felt unnecessary, maybe even risky. Before we went under, she handed me a folded piece of plastic, another rule card. "This one's mine," she said. "If something happens to me, read it only after you surface." I nodded and clipped it inside my suit. We descended together. The cave accepted us immediately. No resistance, no strange currents. It felt like being expected. The walls shifted as we passed, subtle but undeniable. Old passages sealed themselves behind us while new ones opened ahead. We didn't follow a line. We didn't leave markers. We let ourselves become lost. That was the rule. The chamber we reached felt familiar to both of us, even though we'd never been there before. Smooth walls, warm water, the pressure of something vast, waiting to let. The bubbles started, in front of us this time. 2 sets. One was mine, one was Rachel's, then a third joined them. Perfectly timed. A shape rose out of the dark, slow and deliberate. It wore my face now. Not a perfect copy, but close enough to make my chest ache. The eyes were wrong, too empty, too patient. Rachel moved first. She reached out and took its hand. The water stilled completely. I realized then what "don't send it back alone" really meant. It didn't want a cave. It wanted company. Rachel looked at me once through her mask. No fear, just apology. Then she let go of me and drifted backward into the dark, holding on to the thing that wore my face. The cave closed around them like water sealing a wound. The bubbles stopped. I was alone again. I surfaced alone. Same as before. Same cough. Same burning lungs. Same empty feeling like something had been carefully removed from the world and stitched shut behind me. I read Rachel's card only after my hands stopped shaking. It had just one sentence on it. If it takes a shape you love, don't argue with it. That was 3 years ago. Nothing followed me home this time. No wet footprints. No breathing in the dark. The rules went quiet, like they'd finally been satisfied. I think the caves don't want everyone. They want balance, stories, trade. Rachel understood that better than I did. I still feel it sometimes, though. When I'm near deep water, when my breathing slows too much, when a reflection lingers longer than it should. But it doesn't touch me anymore. Because now, somewhere under Yellowstone, 2 figures dive together through tunnels that rearrange themselves. One remembers being human, the other is still learning. And the rules? They're still there. They always will be. I'm telling you this for one reason only. If you ever hear about unexplored caves under Yellowstone, or divers who vanish without equipment damage, don't wonder what happened. They weren't lost. They were kept